Hey friend, there's been a few times that I've shared on Instagram some behind the scenes of my road mapping document and like my design planning and how I kind of do that, and a lot of you had questions about it, so I've put together a template that you can download and use for free, and I'm going to walk through in this video a little bit of my thoughts around roadmap planning and how to plan out your projects as a designer. So there's two kind of different documents, I guess, that I want to walk through in this video. The first one is about roadmap planning, and the second is more design planning. Roadmap planning, in my experience, is typically done twice a year, in the middle and at the end of the year, to sort of prepare for the half ahead. A product roadmap has a few goals. One being is to set the ultimate vision and highlight key projects for the team. Next is to act as a source of truth for executing on projects and sequencing across different cross-functional partners. It also helps to get alignment and buy-in from key stakeholders, and of course helps to facilitate discussion and prioritization amongst the team. I really like roadmap planning sessions when it's really bottoms up and the whole team is involved. We often get together, we do some brainstorming, we do some ideation, and we think a little bit about what are sort of the key strategic big bold bets or like the overall company goals, and how our team or product can ultimately help to fulfill those big bold bets or goals. And it also kind of helps us together set a bit of a strategic vision for what we want to work on going forward. Let's jump on over to my computer and I'll show you how I've laid out this template. All right, here we are over in Google Sheets where I have made this template for you. Now let's look at the 2021 roadmap. So you can see here that I've put a few different columns and they each have a different purpose. So first is priority. What is the priority of this project? And I've included some drop downs here for you so you can just quickly select the priority. If it's priority 0, this means it's like number 1 top priority, followed by priority 1 and 2. And it's important to set priorities because this is really going to help you and the team know what to focus on and what project to tackle first. Next is the project, and this is all fictional data in here, by the way, so don't try to read into any of this, but basically you will have the name of the project followed by a little bit of a description of the project, and that is super helpful for anyone coming in and looking at this sort of roadmap that's not part of your team. Then there's a column for t-shirt size, so just a bit of an estimate of how big this project is. Typically, extra small is 2 weeks, small is maybe 3, 4, medium is 4 to 6, large is 8, and extra large is anything kind of above that. That's sort of a rough guide. The t-shirt sizes are really helpful for kind of understanding roughly how long do we think this project is going to take. Next is the status. So this is the current status of the project. And again, there's a drop down here. You can choose from any of these different statuses, and you can of course also add your own if these don't sort of fit to your needs. If we scroll a little bit to the right, there is a link here for the product requirements document or whatever the sort of brief or product document is about this project. And then also you can add a link to your design here. For me, I often just pop the Figma file in here. Before we continue going to the right, you'll also see that here in row 9, there is a cut line. So usually what happens is based on staffing and available resources, we often can't do all of the projects we want to do. So any projects that kind of don't make it into our priorities and what we're actually able to achieve, that half based on the staff and the resourcing we have available falls into the cut line. So these are projects that say you want to do as a team, but you don't quite have enough staffing or resources to do them. And the reason you keep them here is because they're a good reason to kind of go to leadership and say you need more resources and that you need to hire more. So keep these projects here. They're a great conversational starter. And then if you want, you can move any completed projects down to this completed project section just by cutting and pasting them below, just to kind of get them out of the way. All right, and throughout the half, as you're kind of going through this roadmap, you'll see here I have added kind of like every week of the year. So the week of February 1st, February 8th, and so on and so on. And this is kind of like a Gantt chart style where you can kind of put for each week where you kind of expect to be for that particular project. Maybe like here we're doing some design, and then maybe there's a week for handoff before we get to engineering. So again, I've tried to make this really tidy for you with drop downs, but feel free to edit this as necessary. And note on the checkpoints, you can call these whatever you want. Usually these are like reviews or moments where you maybe check in on the project, share it out to a wider cross-functional team. I've talked a little bit in some of my videos about a checkpoint process that we use at Uber. Stay tuned, I'm probably going to make a more in-depth video about it pretty soon. All right, so that's the road mapping template. In addition to this, I also have a design planning template. And this is more of a personal sort of document that that I use on my own to prioritize the different projects that I'm working on. I'm often working across sub-teams, or I have various work streams going on. Sometimes I might even be working with multiple product managers who don't necessarily have overlap. So for me, I find this design planning sheet really, really helpful to share with my key stakeholders like my product managers, who can come in here at any time and see what my priorities are, what I'm currently working on, what I've got coming up next. This also lets me personally plan and prepare, and I can come into this and see exactly what I should be working on each week and see what's coming up ahead and what I should be preparing for coming up soon. I also sometimes use this document to sync up with engineers and make sure that we're sequencing correctly and that design is always a step ahead. And then lastly, the other thing that this document has been really helpful for is structured conversations with my manager. We look at this spreadsheet quite frequently together, kind of see where I'm at, what projects I'm working on. It's a good visual indicator of my current workload as well, and it's just a good discussion point. Let's jump into the design planning sheet and I'll walk you through how I've set it up. So the design planning sheet just has your projects that you need to focus on or contribute towards as a designer. So I've added a couple columns here. The first is sub-team. So maybe you're working cross-functionally across different teams. Here you can kind of mention whichever team the following projects relate to. So in this case, I have some projects related to money, and here are the 4 projects that I have within the sub-team. Something that I like to do is set a priority for myself on the different projects. So I can come in here and say, okay, first I really need to work on Project Apollo, followed by onboarding funnel and then checkout flow. So for me, it kind of just gives me a nice order of sequencing of how I should come in and which projects to kind of pick up. All right, then we have a status sheet, and this has exactly the same kind of options available in the roadmap. I think there's a way, if you really wanted to kind of link these sheets together somehow. Typically, actually, usually I have these as 2 completely separate Google Sheets, so they're not often in the same Google Sheet. Then moving along, we have this sort of Gantt sheet again. It's pretty much the same from the roadmap. What I kind of do is once a week, I go and check out the roadmap and like spend 5 minutes kind of updating and making sure that I am in sync. Sometimes I think in this case, I haven't added any specific like design related statuses in here, but I might also put in like, get a bit more granular here. So be like, okay, well, I'm in the research phase, or now I'm spending a week doing prototyping or whatever. So you could adjust these statuses as necessary to be just specific to design if you wanted to. Okay, so why do I have these as 2 separate sort of documents or sheets? I'm sure a lot of you are thinking that, why can't I just refer to the product roadmap? Well, in my experience, not every project on a roadmap needs design involvement. So often, a lot of the times when I look at the product roadmap, there's projects that don't need design. And so I prefer to have a more focused view that's just the work that I personally need to be focused on, and it kind of gets rid of all that extra clutter. Also, in my experience, like I mentioned before, I'm often working across sub-teams or work streams where my product managers don't have overlap. And so this way I do have that one centralized source of truth where my product managers can come in and see what I'm working on. And it's also easier for me to have one central document where I can see all the projects I'm working on across teams, rather than having to jump and flick between product roadmaps from different teams. I know a lot of you are also probably thinking, why didn't she make this in Notion? You can totally make this in Notion. I think Notion would be an amazing tool for this. The reason I've done this in Google Sheets is because that's the tool that I use at Uber. We don't use Notion, unfortunately. I'm more familiar with sort of setting this up in Sheets, so that's what I've done, but you can totally readapt this for the tool of your choice. And that's my project roadmapping and design planning sheet. I hope you found this really helpful. I'd be really curious to hear what you do at your company, and if you've taken this on and started using this, then I'd love to hear some feedback. Let me know. The link, as a reminder, to these templates is in the description below. And lastly, if you want to talk more about this one-on-one with me and have a more in-depth discussion about how you do this at your company, or get some feedback or tips or ideas, go ahead and book a session with me on Superpeer. I'd love to chat. All right, until next time, bye.